Oh, hey, friends. Hey, welcome back to the live. I'm just finishing up my coffee here. Actually, coffee can kind of change the world, can't it? I think we're going to talk about that a little bit today. Certainly, coffee has the potential to change my day, that's for sure. But I promise you, if you think about it, can an invitation to coffee change your life as well? I believe it absolutely can. So we're gonna dive into this conversation here today. Before we do, let me just remind you that this is a conversation, and we're here. So we call it Eric Nevins Live because that's my show, my name. But we're here. I'm here because I believe in the human spirit. I believe in you. I believe in the fact that God's made us all unique and wonderful, and with something called agency. Right? We have the opportunity to do something in the world. I think he's made something for each and every one of us to do. So I want to invite you into it. You're invited into this conversation. Join in. You can ask a question wherever you are. If you're watching this on YouTube, please follow us there. If you're watching this on Facebook, you can follow us there too. But just ask a question in the comments and we'll get to it. We're going to have a conversation with you a little bit later. But right now we're going to introduce our guests. So can coffee change the world? Let's find out. All right. Here is the here's where we start. Here, listen, have you heard the term the loneliness epidemic? I've been hearing about this all over the place, and it really made me curious because this is a chronic thing that's happening in our society. So it's being talked about because things like social networks. I did a little research. Social networks for people, like the average number of people that you know, is actually shrinking, including the number of friends that people have. We've got all these friends online, but the number of friends in kind of the offline world is actually the lowest it's been in decades. So that's a real societal issue. And here's the thing: it's not just like for some groups of people or others. It's across age groups. It's across race and gender categories and social strata. So it doesn't matter how wealthy you are. This is a thing that's happening. So these feelings of disconnection leads to things like overwork and diminished spirituality and depression, and it can lead to other kind of behaviors that are really bad for you. It's so common that the chances are good that you or somebody you know or love has experienced this kind of deep isolation and loneliness. So what do we do, right? What do we do? Well, our guest has an answer. Good news, right? The loneliness epidemic is not inevitable, but it's up to each of us. So our guest today, she's an expert at making people feel welcome. I can attest to that. And she shares tips from for everything from what to serve and questions with the right amount of curiosity and how to strike up a conversation with strangers. She regularly hosts wine nights, which we talk about. I love that. We'll talk about that too. She has some of the most interesting people that she meets, and she insists that the world can be changed one cup of coffee at a time. And tea works too, which I love. That's her line. I stole it. Our guest is speaker, author, and the host of Welcome Heart, Living a Legacy Life podcast, Sue Donaldson. Sue, welcome to the live. I'm so grateful that you're here.
Thank you so much. I feel so welcomed, Eric. Good job.
I hope that was good. Well, I love it. So I wanted to have you on to talk about this particular topic, but because I love what you do and I love the intentionality with which you do it. So I mentioned some of those things like the wine night, but it isn't just the fact that you have a wine night. It's the fact that the people that you're inviting to the wine night, they are just sometimes there's random people that you've met, right? Where did you come up with this idea? And then we're going to get into kind of a little bit more of the some of the background, but to start there.
Sure. It's a great story. Uh, it started with I invited some college age kids over to my house for dinner after church. Actually, I was busy that day, so I said, "Can you come a week from Tuesday?" And so they did. And actually, that afternoon, we went to a restaurant and I invited a server to join them and found out that this server had been in class with this same kid that day. So all four came for dinner. It was pouring rain. They love my dog. That always helps. And we sat around the table and I asked each one their story. And at the end, one of the gals said, well, she came up to this town because of a boyfriend and then he dumped her. Well, I could relate to that. I have been dumped many times in my single life, and my heart just went out to her. Plus, Eric, she did my dishes. So, any guest who does your dishes at my house, they get invited back. So I said, Jenny, did you want to come over sometime? I just said that just to her. And we started meeting once a month, and she would bring wine and she would cry. And I would tell her things like, you dodged a bullet, this is
Yeah.
a good thing. And just to jump ahead, she's now married with two kids and married a wonderful engineer, Christian, and God really answered. But back then, we would meet. And then one time she said, in someone else's hearing, I'm going to Sue's for wine night. And this other gal said, well, I want to go to Sue's. And then she invited someone else. So it started with a group of one, us two, and then four. And then we've been doing this about 7 years. So I'll just meet people randomly, like servers or people at the gym, which I hate to go to the gym, but I know God has me there for a purpose. And
But
I'll just say, do you want to get together? And it's only women. So they'll say, well, my husband's busy. I go, good, because he's not invited. And then, so all these women come from different walks of life, different ages, and I always do two questions so that we don't waste our time. We're such good time wasters talking about things that don't really matter. So
yeah.
I always use two questions, and people bring food, and it's just a delightful time.
Yeah, I love that. I love that it just sort of happened randomly. Like it was a thing that kind of it just happened to you, but you picked up the mantle and you ran with it, which
Yeah.
is beautiful. Okay. So I want
Well,
to talk
Eric, I
about
will stop you. There's nothing random with God. You know that.
sure.
Just the fact that we were sitting in that church service, we never go to the 11 o'clock service, but our daughter was home from college and she sleeps in. So
Right.
that's why I met those kids.
Yeah. Well, we could call it providence, right? We can call it providence, even though it feels random to us. But it didn't happen. It was sort of happenstance, or just it wasn't something you were planning on doing, or like. Here's why I say that, because I think a lot of times before we'll take action, we feel like, oh, we have to have some sort of like big sign, right? Or big, like we want a burning bush or something, instead of just following the breadcrumbs where
Oh,
we're
so
supposed to go, which you did. And I think that's beautiful. All right. I want to talk about loneliness. I want to talk about some of this, and kind of what's happening and what we think is going on. So why do you think it's a problem for people obviously it's a problem for people to feel lonely? It doesn't feel good, but why do you think this is happening in our society right now?
I think people are afraid to talk to a stranger. And I have found that if you take the courage to just say a nice comment like, boy, I really like that color on you, it could either stop right there or it could start an engaging conversation where you find out, oh, my parents were from Iowa, or my dad was in the service,
Yeah.
or all these things. Then say, hey, are you open for a get together this Wednesday night? Well, yes, they are. And then you get their number. So to answer your question, I think people are afraid.
Mm.
We're afraid because we've been rejected before, just like my dear friend, this young gal who first came to my house. She'd been rejected. And so I've been rejected. So when you feel that rejection, you're afraid to take the next step. But as followers of Jesus, number one, to be like him, we need to take that first step, and it's a lot of work. I'm wearing an apron. I don't always wear an apron, which I regret later, but the fact of it is, it's an act of service really to
Mm.
barge into someone else's life and then find out you're wanted or you're not wanted. You may not even be wanted. I mean, I've had people multiple times not accept my invitation, and I just say, okay, I'm not their person. I'm not their way to Jesus, other than praying for them. So
Wow.
loneliness comes, I think, when you're too afraid to follow those breadcrumbs. I loved how you just said that, Eric. That's so true. To go to work, to go to the gym, to go to church even, and pray in advance. Who do you want me to talk to today, Lord? Is a beautiful prayer, and he'll answer that prayer where you'll sit somewhere different that day, or you'll walk into a room and say, I wonder who needs me to sit by them, or maybe I'm the one who needs to be ministered to.
Where did that posture come from for you? Where, like, go all the way back as far as you
Yeah,
can remember. Like,
I can tell you this story because I've been speaking on this for 30 years, and it came from this my mother. She was very hospitable, but the story I like to tell is that she was not raised with hospitality. And
oh,
I was shocked when I found that out. I was asked to speak to a bunch of college girls at our church 30 years ago on hospitality. And so my mother was visiting. So I go, hey, mom, let's have a conversation. Where did this come from that you raised all five of us with hospitality? And she said to me, well, I wasn't raised with hospitality. I go, you weren't? No, my mother never had anybody over. It was during the Depression. They didn't have any money. Her parents just didn't do it. And I said, well, then how come you did it? And she goes, well, she tells this hilarious story where she goes, well, when your brothers were little, because I'm the fourth of five, your dad invited the deacon board over for pie and coffee. And I was so upset because I knew how to make pie, but I didn't know how to make coffee, which is, of course, the opposite nowadays. And so she said, so I made the pie and I put all the pieces on all the plates, and then I scooped out the vanilla ice cream on the pie plates. And then I couldn't get the top off this vacuum topped coffee maker that she had on top of the stove. She goes, for 30 minutes. And so by that time, all the ice cream was melted all over the pieces. And I go, and she goes, I was mortified. And I go, Mom, I'm just mortified listening to you tell that story. That's just so awful. I said, why didn't you invite the men in? They were probably all engineers and they would have loved to figure it out. She goes, I would do that now because I have self confidence now. But at the time, I was
oh yeah.
insecure. And I thought part of the reason we don't do hospitality or anything brave that God is asking us to do is we're not willing to take that first step and fail and realize it didn't matter. It didn't matter that we failed. What mattered is that those people came over. And so then she learned through practice, it's called practicing hospitality because of my mother. Through practice, she realized how important it was for her. And so we were all raised, and we all know how to make coffee. We'll still buy our pie, but we know how to make coffee. So,
uh,
I love to quote Philip Yancey. He wrote this great quote, which was breaking the chain of ungrace. Eric, we've all been
mm,
raised with some ungrace in our past because our parents were not perfect. But we can choose with God's help to break a chain that we've been enchained with because we were raised a certain way for the sake of our children and for the sake of the legacy and for the sake of our neighbors.
yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's an interesting thought because it takes some bravery to do that, right? It takes some courage
Courage.
to break those things. Okay, while you were talking, I mentioned this too in a lot of episodes, but a couple of years ago, I went through a what I call a mindset kind of year where I just read a bunch of books that were all about mindset in some way, and one of them was a book called Rejection Proof, which
Mhm.
was all about this idea of how do I go through and just make rejection feel less personal. And so he kind of goes on this. I think he did a YouTube channel, but he talked about. He goes on this. What do they call it? Exposure therapy for rejection. And he just tries to get rejected for 100 days in a row.
Wow.
And then he finds out like he was having a hard time getting rejected because he could ask for things like he would went to what's the donut place? Krispy Kreme. It was during the
Yeah.
Olympics, and he asked him like, "Hey, can you make me Olympic ring donuts?" Thinking there's no way they'll do it, and they did, and they even did different colors of frosting. So,
Uh-oh.
like, wow! So I think sometimes we don't realize how big a problem this is because we think if I feel lonely, it's probably just me, and it's because something's
Right,
wrong with me.
right.
When really, the realities and the statistics. I mean, I was looking at some of this stuff just to prepare for this conversation. It's like more than half of people feel this sort of loneliness. I think we have a society right now in the United States where we don't talk to each other, where we don't um, like to have random conversations. Everybody's staring at their phones, so they're not looking at each other when they're walking around. It's a problem. So how do we cultivate that courage? And maybe is there something or a practice that we could do to kind of start or get started with,
Well,
whether
I
it's
guess
mind night or something else?
you could, well, I think just the main thing, because I'm a follower of Jesus, is to start with prayer, especially if it's someone you're afraid to invite over because you're afraid they're I've had someone say, "Well, I don't do hospitality anymore because people don't come." And I thought, well, that may have happened one time
Mm,
that people didn't come, and that shut her down right there. And I think we just keep trying. It's like what my brother said on your podcast. You open all the doors that are
oh
open.
yeah,
You go through all the doors that are open, and you knock on the ones that aren't.
that was
And
good.
I thought that is brilliant. And so
Well,
I'll invite the whole neighborhood for Christmas brunch and maybe get 10 women and think that was a lot of work for 10 women. But then when I hear the conversation and go, okay, that was worth it.
yeah. See, I think that's interesting because that's changed over time, right? It used to be if you invited, like going out or going to somebody's house was like a big deal, right? Back in the day, and now it's kind of tough to do. So I'll give you an example. My daughter's 23. I think you have. I don't know if we have daughters the same age, but um, and she is inviting people over. She decided to do because she's trying to make friends. She
Yeah.
decided to do a Bible study. I hope she doesn't mind me telling the story. I didn't ask her. She's doing a Bible study at our house. I told her, hey, yeah,
Oh,
have it here. So she's leading it. She's
yeah.
baking and bringing and people over, and then she's got like 10 people on her thing, and maybe a couple will show up on a given
uh,
week. It's just a different dynamic, and I don't know if it's the kids are afraid or there's something. It's just a little different. We have to break through that.
well, I remember when I was about her age and I had a new job, it's a new community, a new church. I love my church. And I was standing in the parking lot one Sunday after church, and everybody was getting their kids into their minivans, and off they went, waving goodbye. I knew they liked me, but they didn't invite me over for dinner.
Yeah.
And I thought, why didn't they invite me over for dinner? I'm standing here all by myself. And I didn't say that, but I was so lonely. And I think they thought I had this exciting single life, which I did not. And I would have so loved to have been at their kitchen sink, peeling potatoes
Wow.
or holding their babies who were screaming so they could make lunch for me, but they didn't have that mindset. Their
Yeah.
life was full. And then later so what I did then, because I wanted to make friends, sorry, my dog's barking, is I called all these women that I liked and I invited them for a Saturday brunch because it was cheap. I didn't make a lot of money. And they said, "Well, we didn't know you could cook." I said, "Well, who says I could cook? I can read." If you read nowadays, you just have to Google or go to Costco or Aldi's or something. But the fact is that I invited them over and maybe took them away from a busy Saturday, but they kept coming and they became my friends. And these women, really, I had about 6 or 8 women who were discipling me by the time I left that area. But I had to make the first step. And
Yeah.
the place we should not be lonely the most is our church family. And yet I find that it is rampant. You stand out in a church court. I have a friend who's an introvert, and she says, I hate going to the courtyard after the first service because no one's talking to me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. I'm trying to think about because I don't relate to that at all. Right? Like that's the part I like. So I'm the kind of like I go to church and I'm like I don't need to sit in the sermon or whatever. I want to talk to the people out here. Let's do that because that's just so much more life giving to me. That's what I I could do this. I could do my own sermon, whatever. That's fine. But the talking to people, getting to know the people, I go into a crowd. I'm like, who are all these people? I need to find out. And so
Right.
it's just a little bit of a different mindset, but that's not something that most people have. Okay, so we need to break these patterns. What do you think keeps people from breaking these patterns to reach out to somebody, even a stranger?
What keeps them from it?
Yeah, what keeps them? Why don't we do that?
Well, I think shyness. There's a natural shyness. I have 3 daughters who know how to run a room because they were raised by us, but one is a strong introvert, but she just gets over herself. She
Mm,
realizes that the people coming in need to be asked questions, so she'll have questions in mind, um, and they need to be served. And so I think it's selfishness. I think it's pride. I'll just name it. I think
yeah,
it's self-serving. I think we call it insecurity, but all it is self-love. And if we love Christ enough to open our mouths to say, "Hey, how are you today? And I was thinking about you this week. Why is that so hard?" And they'll say, "Oh, that's just Sue. You're an extrovert." Well, sure, I'm an extrovert, and I get myself in trouble because I'm an expert, and you do too, Eric, I'm
I
sure,
do.
because we mouth off too much. So we have our own issues. So I don't use that as an excuse. I just think, hey, one thing I remember my mom saying is, I just ask questions because I'm interested in people. And that's what Jesus was. He was interested in us. I love John Ortberg's quote where he says, God relentlessly pursues us because all he's ever wanted was to be with us. So if we
Yeah.
have
Mm,
that, we talk about mindset. If we have a mindset of pursuing for the sake of Jesus, then even when we're tired or we have to change the sheets one more time because it's a lot of work, hospitality is a lot of work,
yeah.
then we go, hey, I'm doing this because God's called me and he's going to give me the strength to anything he's called me to.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to talk about the work piece, but I want to address this question. Why should we care that so many people are lonely in our society? What happens if we don't address it? What happens if we're not the change that we want to see?
Well, it just goes back to God so loved the world that he gave his only son. I mean, if he was willing to give his son, can't we go across the street? I'm sorry, it makes me cry, but I think it's
Yeah.
ridiculous. I like to say, God, he loved us to the cross and back. He did something so big, and maybe our problem is that we don't value God enough. We don't embrace his love for ourselves enough. Once you do that, it's just an automatic spillover. It's
Mm,
an automatic spillover. Someone said the other day that her former pastor would say, love them until they ask you why.
yeah,
Until
that's
we
good.
have that kind of love, we're not we're not following what God provide. We're so spoiled and God has given us so much. I'm speaking to myself here, that we take him for granted. But people are perishing. That's an old-fashioned word, but they're perishing in their loneliness,
Yeah.
and they say, "No one cares about me," and they have all this victimizing. May it not be on our heads, Eric, that we know someone who is feeling this way and we have not reached out to them.
Amen. It's in our power, right? It's in our power. And it's
Well,
not it's not
you know,
everybody. It's not everybody,
it's exhausting. It can't be
but
everybody.
but maybe every day or maybe every so often. Okay. I want to invite so that was great, Sue. So I want to invite our friends watching because we have a number of people watching right now to answer this question, okay? When was the last time somebody made you feel truly
Mm,
welcome? When was the last time that happened for you? Put your answer in the chat. Put wherever you're watching this. Just put your answer in there. Think
mm.
about it, and it might take a minute, right? I was thinking about this question, and uh, well, I have an answer from not too long ago, but it might be a minute if you have to think about it. There. So, Sue, how about you? Do you have a story about when was the last time somebody really made you feel welcome?
I love it when they start asking me questions about my week or about my latest prayer request that I've already shared with them. Um, One thing that I would do as a host, because when my kids were little, it's really hard to do a lot of hospitality because you're so tired or whatever. So I'd have friends over who would be already seated at the table, and then when someone else would come over, I would make sure they would be asking them questions so I could get the work done, and I think that makes them feel welcome because someone is paying attention to
Mm,
them. We work so hard on the hospitality part that we can ignore the actual person that we're serving, and so to make them feel welcome might be just to give them a big hug, though not everybody likes that, but to, just ask them questions is the best way.
yeah, I love that. I think that's great. I was trying to think about. So I had this experience a couple weekends ago where I just went to a friend's house and they were like, "Hey, you're coming with us," and we're going downtown. Let's go. And I was like, "Hey,
Oh,
I don't know, I don't know about what going out or whatever." They're like, "Nah, we're covering it. Don't worry." And we just went out and we went
wow.
and we did the whole thing. I had a great time.
Feel
Uh,
loved.
I did, and I felt like, and I was with my friend. It was his birthday, so that was cool. But um, it was really welcoming, right? And just kind of a chance to sort of just be, for an evening. That was fun. But that doesn't happen every day, right? And it can't. I get that, but that's a thing. So that's my answer, friends. If you have an answer to that question, when's the last time somebody made you feel really welcome?
Mhm.
Think about it, and if not, maybe put that in there too. If it hasn't happened for a while or whatever, put something in there. So I'd love to hear that. All right, so I think you addressed this really good. I think you really well. You have a way of approaching it, not only that you talk about, but that you practice, and you've got some other ideas. You've written these in books as well. So you told us about wine night. Okay, tell us now about um, like, is that when you discovered that you had a gift for hospitality, or did you just kind of develop that over time?
Oh no, I that was this that wine night's like I'm old. I'm 73, so I've been doing this a long time. So wine night's about 7 years old, no big deal. No, I started writing about it because people ask me to speak at women's retreats, and they go, "The only thing we really care that you speak about is hospitality." And I thought, "Why? It's not such a big deal." And then I talk to people, and they go, "It's a big deal."
It's huge.
So I say there's when I speak, I give 17 reasons why we don't do it. And so I try
Oh,
to hit all the different reasons. It's just an odd number, but that's what it came out. And then I addressed them. And I said, but the main reason to do it anyway, and this is what has spurred me on, because we all need a why, right? If you know your why, you can overcome all these obstacles. The why is when we invite someone to our table, we are displaying the welcoming heart of God. So that's the main reason. So whether you do it at a table in a formal setting or a
mm,
back porch, or you grab someone like your friend did and said, let's go downtown, there's a hospitality, welcoming aspect, inviting heart thing when we do it. However, God shows us to do it. We get to show off God's welcome to someone else who may not come to a Bible study. I can't see my neighbors coming to a Bible study until they've come to my house at least 16 times.
yeah,
They much rather come to my house because it's not a Bible study. It's coming over to talk to Sue and she's going to feed us or whatever, or it's a potluck.
yes,
Yeah.
I
So
agree.
that's where you start and you do it for the fact that you get to show off God's welcoming heart.
Yeah,
What better way, whatever the reason is there.
I love that. One of the things, have you heard the old joke about kind of middle aged men? Maybe not, but that you have at a certain point you have only a couple of choices. And you can either get really into World War II history or barbecue. Like something like that.
And
And
you're in
so
barbecue.
I chose barbecue because I was like, I'll make more friends that way, right? Rather than if I'm giving random facts about Alsace Lorraine or whatever. So that that's that's what I chose. But we did that on purpose because it gives us an opportunity to get to know people, right? And to have we've had 70 people in our backyard for barbecue that I cooked, and everybody brought something, and it was very we had way more food than any, but even 70 of us could eat, and we
Yeah.
could enjoy drinks and
Well,
whatever. So
I'm married to a physician and an extreme introvert who didn't have any company growing up, so that was a big adjustment. So we don't do company the same way my folks did. That's another
mm,
good point because people are married to different people. But I did tell him I get the holidays, so I just sort of insisted on that. And because he's a doctor, he doesn't get time off like normal people do.
sure.
And I would get so lonely. So started inviting, this is maybe 25 years ago, started inviting other families over for Christmas Eve after the church service, if they went to church, who did not have family in the area because our family was far away. And we couldn't leave because of Mark's stupid job. I mean, his wonderful job. And so we invited people over, and it's called a soup and bread potluck. And people either bring bread or they bring soup. And I'll make between 4 and 6 soups the day before. And I have a plethora of crock pots because I love to go to thrift stores. So that's not a problem for me. But the idea is then you can pick up strays. I always say, bring anybody
Oh,
you want.
wow.
So we've had 25 to 50 people on a Christmas Eve. And let me tell you, I saw someone in a thrift store 2 weeks ago who said, Sue, and I did not recognize her. She goes, and she my name is, I think her name was Sapphire, but I don't think that was the name her mother gave her. But anyway, she had come to a Christmas Eve soup potluck years ago. I go, hey, you want to come this year? It's Christmas Eve. You always know the time and the day. And it was amazing because she ended up in prison. And I got to visit her
Oh,
in
wow.
prison. It was just, but the main thing is you don't just do it for strangers, but you do it for your family. Now my kids have been raised with these other families' kids, and they only see them on Christmas Eve. And they know they can bring other people. This is a fun story. With one couple who comes every year, they came in the front door on Christmas Eve, and I'm greeting them, and they brought this gal, and I gave her a big hug, and I said, well, how do you know my friend? She goes, oh, I just met her on the sidewalk. She was at a youth hostel walking by our church after the Christmas Eve service and asked my friends, where's the nearest grocery store? And they said, well, if you don't mind, we'll take you. And then on the way, they go, you just want to go to our friend's house for soup and bread? And she said, okay. And so the next day she went to the movies with us after Christmas, after we
Wow.
opened presents. Yeah, I don't remember her name. She was from Norway or something. So yeah, you pick up strays, but you also teach your children um, the preciousness of other people.
Well, there's something so valuable about that too. Like, they're just people who are out there, and but they need to be loved and have somebody there. You don't know the impact of that kindness. You don't know what that could do to have some place to go. Okay, I want to go back to something you said earlier because I suspect that our friends are watching and they're having some thoughts, right? Because it's one thing, it's like, oh, Sue, you're obviously extroverted, you're very gregarious, you're one of the funniest people I know. Obviously, you do this thing, and it's no problem for you to just say, oh, bring anybody you want on Christmas Eve, whatever. When the rest of us are whatever we're doing, traveling or whatever. Um, and so they probably have some hangups. And you mentioned that you talk about this. You don't have to go through all 17, but
Oh,
what are some of them? Because I suspect some people don't like to have people in their house, or there's all kinds of stuff. So,
yeah.
what are a couple of those that we can talk about, and then maybe the most common, and then maybe we can get over them. Maybe you can give us some advice about working through that.
The most common is that they weren't raised with it, so they have no experience about how to do it, so they stop right there. The next one is they don't like to cook and they think that's what it's all about. Another one is time. When I started working part time and had all these children, I thought, well, no wonder people don't do it. It's so exhausting. And and so time, also money. I don't have the resources. They'll say. One will say, well, my husband doesn't talk. I go, well, I can relate to that. Or my children are too little. I was speaking at a MOPS once, and this woman raised her hand. She goes, I have 4 kids. Do I wait till they're in college before I have people over? I go, no, 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 honey. This is when you need to do it because you need that fellowship. And so they think, oh, my kids don't behave. They're crawling all over the floor under the table. That's another reason. My table is too small. Oh, this is funny. I spoke at another women's conference and then we had lunch afterwards. And this woman sat next to me, a young woman. She goes, well, the reason I didn't go to your workshop is because we're remodeling. And I just kept my mouth shut because, we were in the middle of a 13-year remodel when I was speaking on hospitality. And I told my husband, I go, as long as we can keep having people over, I will endure this, the fact that we don't have a ceiling, that we don't have cabinets, etc. So there's ways to get over it, but I see that though if I had to face all 17, I would never have anybody over all at once. So you just take them down one by one.
Right. So what I'm hearing you say is we can come up with lots of excuses, right? There's lots of reasons that we don't do it,
Right.
and or that we don't reach out. And here's the other thing I want to say. Well, hold on. I'm gonna edit myself. So I've got lots of thoughts. There's lots of reasons we don't. We can come up with lots of excuses, and the reality is those are all overcomable, right? Every single one of them, if we want to.
Right.
So that's one thought. Um, the second thought is I think there's something more about we often don't feel adequate for the
Mm.
task and even for the conversation. And I think so many people, one of my reasons I think people do this or don't do this is I think most people just simply have a sense that they just haven't received it before, right?
Mm.
Like they
Mm.
want it, but they haven't really received it, and so they don't, like maybe you're saying they don't have a category for it, but I think most of us, if you receive it, then it's a whole different deal, right? It's easier to take your hospitality and offer it as well.
Well, that's why I talk about receiving God's hospitality first.
Mm,
Because if we really, really believe that He invited you, Eric Nivens, to His table, and it's a bountiful table all the time, full of grace and hope and future and purpose, then we just take that and we just pass it on to the next person. It's really just an overflowing life. So when I'm feeling stingy and tired and worn out, I think I felt that way 2 days ago, where I didn't want to talk to anyone, and I hope no one wants to talk to me unless they want to take me out for a steak dinner. Then they can talk to me. But when I'm feeling that puniness, I'm not receiving what God has wanted to give me. So then there's no overflow. Paul writes in Ephesians 3 to be filled up to all the fullness of God. That's the end of that really glorious
mm,
prayer about love. But that's the phrase that gets me the most, to be filled up to all the full. I don't even know what that means, Eric, to be filled up with the
yeah,
fullness of God. We don't have that capacity, but he prayed it, so I'm going to pray it too. So when we're filled up with his fullness, there's the overflow of saying, "Hey, we don't even have to make excuses. Hey, I'm going to use Pillsbury canned biscuits tonight. I'm not making them homemade. Do you still want to come over?" We don't even have to say that. We just have them over, and we
right.
pound that biscuit can on the counter, and it explodes everywhere. And then we say, "Let's go out."
I like that. Okay, yeah, I think that's part of it. So one of the things I'm wondering about, because you have this, I love your line. I've told you this before personally, but your line about, and I stole it earlier, about coffee changes the world one cup of coffee at a time, and tea works too. You're saying something with that. Uh, in that sort. What are you getting at with that phrase?
Well, I'm getting at the fact that we want to have purpose. We think it has to be something huge. Even as Christians, we think, well, I think if I go to seminary, then I could lead a Bible study. Or if I think I go to the mission field, I'll be a better Christian, because that's the real kind of good Christian if you go to the mission field. No, you can change the world by changing one person's life, by making them feel and seen by God himself. And they maybe have no relationship with God, and you just take over some banana bread or scones from Trader Joe's. Thankfully, they have a Trader Joe's across the street. So you can do that. You don't have to make it. You just show them God's love one cup of coffee at a time. And the reason I added tea works too, because I've had people say, well, I don't drink coffee. That is off the topic. That is just aw It's like when my husband broke his ankle, and the surgeon was saying, "Mark, I can give you surgery." He goes, "Oh, I don't need surgery." He goes, "You'll never hike with Sue in 15 years." All he said was, "Sue doesn't hike." I go, "Honey, that is not the topic. The topic is not whether or not you drink coffee or even tea." My brother Steve is so hospitable, and he said, "Sue," he doesn't drink coffee or tea. And he said, "Sue, I have found that people I can just offer someone a glass of water." And I thought, well, that's just like Jesus, that's even more spiritual, because when
Yeah,
you offer somebody a glass of water, in Jesus' name, you're giving them a little part of Jesus.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's right. What I hear you saying is, hey, look, you don't have to have it. One, you don't have to have it perfect. It doesn't have to be elaborate. It
No,
doesn't. It doesn't have to be a big deal. So this is my perfectionism is the 70 people at the barbecue, right? Where I just have a bunch of people, and what I want is a highly curated, very beautiful. All the lights on the patio look great, and all this whole thing. Like that's how I want to do it.
sure.
Um, but then we only do a few of those a year, maybe sometimes only one, right?
Mm,
Because that's just how we do
a
it.
lot of
It's a lot of work, and we got to have everything perfect.
work. Mhm.
Versus, uh, maybe just Bible study every week or whatever it might be, or just an occasional invite. Um, and it can be. I think I've heard you say before. It can be just you know a plate of cookies, and you don't even have to make them, and
I think
something
something we
else.
miss out too, if you live in a college town, um, or even not, to find a young person that you can adopt. Their parents are far away.
Mm, yeah.
Um, we have adopt a college student program at our church, and so if I get one as a freshman, I have them for 4 years, and I might just have them over every 2 months for lunch, but college students will eat anything, and I'm having 24 this Sunday night because that's the leadership team. So that's a lot more work. I'll be working on that for a couple days. But my adopted college student just got engaged last Sunday. So she and her fiance will be coming over soon and we're going to talk through these things. But that is such a blessing to our lives, especially because my kids are away. They don't live in California or they
Yeah.
don't live in town. And so if you could just say, "Hey, I can adopt a college student," because their parents will thank you forever too, because they miss their kids.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right, I'm going to put my church hat on for just a second too. Because that is, I think, the definition of discipleship as well,
Mm,
which is something I care about a lot. It's halfway there was all about the spiritual journey and how where we go on that. Um, and I think we misdefine it sometimes. Discipleship sometimes is misdefined as how much I know or what I'm going to do if I'm going to go be a pastor or be a missionary or something like that. When really it's a way of being. It's a way of following Jesus versus a certain thing that we know or do. Those things have value and they're part of it, but they're not all of it. And a good chunk of it is the kind of relationships that we build. And if we're able to go, so this is what I love hearing from you, as somebody who's older than me. Like this is a great encouragement to remember that it's just an invitation, really. That's all,
mm,
and an openness to ask a few questions and hear a story. Here's the other thing: you might hear a story that you don't like,
yeah,
right?
that's true.
Or
Yeah.
that you're not ready for, or that is crazy. I mean, one thing, I've been a listener my whole life. I hear stories, man. People tell me stories. I'm like, okay, that's
Mhm.
that was
That's
definitely
right.
not the one I was looking for. But what a privilege that is, right? And I think that's a mindset. It's a privilege to hear somebody's story, even if it's not something that you were expecting.
True.
Yeah.
Very true.
So, do you think of it as discipleship? Because you look at. I mean, I hear you saying, "Hey, we're discipling these college students, and we're talking to them." I mean, maybe you wouldn't put it that way. That makes it feel maybe a little more formal than it is. But
Well, I did write a book on mentoring and I called it
mm,
Table Mentoring. And I think it's probably a bad title because people think I'm mentoring them on how to do hospitality, but it's really what we do at the table with the person sitting right next to us.
I
And
love that.
it may be just a one-time mentoring, which is probably not the true definition of mentoring, where I call it one-shot mentoring, where you have an opportunity to say something significant that they need to hear, even in line at a grocery store.
Mm,
But the idea is where you spend some significant time, maybe 3 months, meeting once a month or a couple times a month, and you pour pour into them whatever God has poured into your life. You can always find someone who's just a little bit further down the road that you can glom onto and learn from them. And then you always have someone a little bit further behind. And it's really not chronological. I mean, there are people who are older than me, but they don't know God or they haven't known
mm,
him as long. And that doesn't matter. In fact, my mentor of 20 years is only a couple years older, but she's much wiser. and we still meet, and it's such a blessing to my life. Main thing because she prays for my children.
Yeah. Yeah, and that matters. And when you have that opportunity, it really
Yeah,
it can be life changing, right? Like I tell
totally
this
life changing.
I tell the story sometimes because I think about it a lot. Um, without going into the whole specifics of the spiritual journey, I've interviewed maybe a handful of people who I think are like down the road in what I would call the life of love, right? Most of us don't. I don't know if we get there. I'll put you there too soon. But the one lady I interviewed, her name was Edith. She was in our church. I think she was in her 90s, right? And she pulled out interesting story. Her husband died, and then Jesus started talking to her, and she started having these conversations. It was a very interesting. Like, I was like, well,
Wow.
where'd that come from? She was, I don't know. I don't even know, which I thought was fascinating. That's an interesting thing to have happen to you. But she had her she pulled out a binder. It was her prayer book. It was a 3-ring binder. It was a huge thing. She
Mm.
opened it up, and she was like, I pray for my family, and I pray for, here's all my grandkids and my great grandkids, and I pray for the elders of the church, and here you are. And she had me and my family and all in there because
Precious.
right while we were there. I mean, that was an amazing moment, but I thought it was um, just a really welcoming moment, we could say. Just like, wow, okay, I didn't expect that in this conversation because I thought I was bringing she's doing me a favor by telling me some of her story, but
Right.
that's pretty amazing.
Really amazing. And we can uh when I tell people, like, I've met with a couple girlfriends for 14 years, they'll go, "Well, can I join?" And I go, "We have a hard time figuring out a schedule just for 3 people. So I suggest that you ask the Lord for your own group, not to try to be a clique, but you
Yeah,
need someone that you can pour into and who can pour into your life." So it's just we're not meant to do this life alone. And I read that Mother Teresa said that the most terrible poverty is loneliness. And
hmm.
I thought, wow, because she worked with terrible, terrible, frightening, horrific poverty. But she said that the most terrible poverty is loneliness. And if we can do what, if we can help that one person, that's a great way to live, that we've helped them not feel lonely. Can't
Yeah,
think of a better way to live.
I love that. And going back to what you said a little bit earlier, that is, which is kind of where you get your welcome heart phrase, but that is the thing about what God is doing, right? I go back to this all the time. God, I will be their God, they will be my people. That is what he says over
Yes.
and over and over again. And we gotta remember that when we're emulating that as part of it. Okay. Do you have any stories for us about somebody who you helped start doing hospitality or overcome something and
Yeah.
maybe some difficulty and how that went?
Yeah. I was just gratified to know this gal. She was invited by someone else to wine night, and she was Jenny number 3. I have a collect, and we became fast friends. She was going to another church, and just recently, she's in a growth group or a group of men and women from her church on Sunday nights and wanting to feed them. And she goes, "This is not me." And I thought, "It isn't?" Because I just figured that was her personality. She goes, "No." And it was because I think of her watching. She comes for Christmas Eve soup potluck, and she comes for Thanksgiving, and she brings her kids and her parents, and it's wonderful. But she even said recently, she goes, "Well, we may not come because I'm doing it with my growth group." Oh, yeah, Thanksgiving. And she said, "They may need to be at my house if they don't have a place to go." See, that's carrying on the legacy. And I said,
Yeah.
"Well, we'll miss you, so you have to come for dessert." I was kind of insisting on they come a little bit because we love them. But the fact is, she was taking the ball and running it herself, and that's what we should do. We're supposed to replicate little Jesuses, right?
Yeah, I love that. So it's kind of infectious, right? And so then
Yes,
what you've done is you've created this your own space to help people be um included, but then also you've you pass it on, and now somebody else is
Right.
actually doing
And
it as well.
one thing I want to add here is you don't have to do it like someone else. You do it the way. When I was a missionary with Wycliffe, I had this one family that supported me $100 a month. I was a big supporter. And when I came home, they wanted to have me for dinner. And instead of this big formal thing, we sat on the living room floor and talked, and they ordered pizza. That is so unlike the way I was raised. My mother would put out the china because she liked china. It was not like she was so hoity-toity. But that so surprised me. I thought, well, that was just the way they were, loving, wonderful, gracious, generous people. Of course, now I don't order pizza because it costs too much. But that's just their style. And I felt so loved and welcomed. So you don't have to do it a certain, what you find out, Eric, and I talk about this in my seminar and in my first book, is when you try it out, you'll find out what you're comfortable doing. And this is the point about being comfortable doing it a certain way. Like you're comfortable doing the barbecue. When you're comfortable doing it, you can focus on the guest. And
Yeah.
that's the main difference between hospitality and entertaining is that you're focusing on the guest. You're not focusing on yourself. When we get uptight, we're focusing up on ourselves. And it's understandable because we all get a little nervous. But we go, Lord, I don't want to be uptight because I want to think about what is the need of this person coming. I don't really know their need. We think we know their need, but what they really need is the Lord, and there may be some deep hurt that
Mm,
we know nothing about. But God knows their need, and they know they need to be at your house at a certain time, at a certain day.
yeah, I love that. Okay, you reminded me of one of my favorite barbecues we had, which was the Christian Podcasters Association barbecue when the podcast movement was here. That was fun. That was, and my focus after the food, once I got that figured out, was on everybody who was there because I wanted to get to know them better and I wanted to serve them and hear from them, and that was nice.
Let me ask you a question. What is your best question in you're trying to get to know someone better?
Oh, that's a good question.
I wrote a book on questions, by the way. So
You did, and people should check that out. You were kind enough to send it to me. Yeah, that's good.
I
I've got
did.
it. You
I did.
did. It's
I don't remember.
over there on my free bookshelf. Um, those are all the books I've gotten over the years. Yeah, it's a good. Here's the thing. I think it can be almost anything, right?
Oh,
So sometimes it just depends on the situation. I'll comment in a nice way about something somebody's said or has something. Maybe they like nice shirt or something, or you can just ask a question. I don't really have a go to. I don't mind asking the old what do you do? I try not to say like tell me about yourself. That's a little too vague, but I don't mind asking about their work or family in the area or whatever it might be. But it's just that kind of starter thing. Or sometimes it's just stuff that's going on in the area, or I'll point something out in the grocery store line like
yeah.
Brad Pitt's getting divorced again or whatever it is, whatever this things are. But that can just start I just be silly sometimes. And um I feel like sometimes that's a persona. Like I have this little persona that I can put on and just go, oh, what about that? And then that breaks the ice, and then I can start to ask questions and uh, get to know things, get to know people.
Yeah, and I think it was Janelle Wood who said the most important part about hospitality was listening. And
Yeah,
that can be a challenge because we want to break in and tell them our thoughts about whatever they're saying instead of really listening to what they're saying so that we can ask a really good follow-up question because we're thoroughly interested in them as a person because God loves them.
that's such a great point. Listening is huge. I don't think. Oh, okay. Let's connect some threads, shall we, Sue? Let's just connect some threads. Because I'm curious about that. There's probably a relationship between people being lonely and never being listened to.
Oh,
Do you think that's true?
totally. But they also might they might feel like no one listens to them, but I also hear in that whininess, like no one ever listens to me.
Sure.
So you have to sort of regulate that, but you do have to self-advocate a little bit sometimes, but loneliness could be that you've just given up reaching out.
Mm,
And you don't need a whole pot. You don't need 50 people for Christmas Eve not to be lonely. You can be lonely in a crowded room.
right.
So I just think it's God. God wants us to love each other, and if there's something that we need to get over, He will show it to us, and He will show us who we need to reach out to, so that we're not lonely. And sometimes I think, oh, I really want to give my opinion on this. And I thought, Sue, you don't need to give your opinion. You don't need to be listened to because God is listening to you.
Mm.
If you have this conversation going on, I love what your friend said that she hears from God. Well, I don't hear from God enough because I'm always talking. I need to just shut up and let him talk and say, then he would lead me to the next person who needs to know more about his love or who needs banana bread.
Banana bread is delightful. There, have you heard this? They're saying now on I've seen this on TikTok. People say that banana bread is like the male version of flowers. So like if you bring flowers for a woman, if a woman brings banana bread for a guy, he's like, I'm in love. It's great. That's fantastic.
We belong to a local winery, and one reason we love it is because we've gotten to know all the servers. In fact, some of them have been to my house for Easter or for wine night. But so last week, Mark and I went, and I brought banana bread. And our favorite server was there. I go, John, are you going to be serving us? And he said, yes. I go, would you like some banana bread? He said, yes. And he took it right away. So a male server, and he took the banana bread. And so when I make things, this is a tip, you just double it so that you have stuff in the freezer all the time. And I said, this came out of the freezer, so wait till you get home and put it in the microwave or the oven, put some butter on it. I had to give him instructions. And it's just a way of, I still leave a tip, but the idea is that it's just so homey, that it's
Yeah.
homemade. It's a gift.
Oh, that's so good. Okay, I got distracted by banana bread. What else did you say? You said something else there that I wanted to
I don't know.
comment on.
Someone is asking how they leave comments. Do you want to tell them how to leave a comment?
Oh yeah, you leave comments just right on the video. So wherever you're watching, you can leave a comment. You can put it in on YouTube or Facebook or Instagram, and I will see it. Or LinkedIn. We're even on LinkedIn. So
Wow.
yeah, we're across the fruited internet, as I like to say. There's got to be a way
Across the fruit.
to say that. But
Can I
anyway,
show my books? This is the first book. Did you
yes.
want me
Okay,
to?
I wanted to talk about that because you have this book come to my table. What do
Oh,
we
yeah.
find in that book? How can you help people if people want to check it out?
Oh, where to find it? Oh, they're all on Amazon. Is that
They're
what
all
you
on
said?
Amazon. You could also
Yeah.
go to welcomeheart.com. But what tell us about the contents of Come to My Table.
This was the first one, and it's really talking about God's hospitality to us, and then ours, and how to pass it on, and how to get started. And there's over 60 recipes. That's kind of like a, and then there's 25 theme party ideas. The idea of a theme party is that if for the shy person, especially, they don't know what to talk about when someone walks in, but if there's a theme going on, it just takes care of itself. So, like one time, a friend said they were moving, and I was so upset they were moving because I love them so much. And I said, I want to give you a going away party. And they said, oh, no, don't put the attention on us. God has just been so faithful. They're very spiritual.
Uh-huh.
So I said, okay, well, we're going to have a God is faithful party, and you're going to be the guests. And everybody brought something that showed a symbol of how God has been faithful to them. It was such a great party, and everybody stood up and showed their little thing, and this is how God was faithful. And it was a potluck, so that made it easy for me because I was 8 months pregnant. And so just the idea like that. So those tips are in there as well as reasons why we do it anyway. So it's God's hospitality and yours. And then I wrote a Bible study to go with it because my mentor told me I had to, and it turned out pretty fun. And there's 12 recipes. And when people do it, I'll FaceTime them in the middle, and I'll answer questions. And this one group up in Oregon, they made all 12 of the recipes for one potluck. So they were having like lasagna for breakfast. It was pretty funny. So I called them during the middle of that. So that was fun. Then I wrote a book on mentoring, which we mentioned. And then my mentor also said, please write a book on conversation starters, because whenever I come to your house, you ask a good question and it helps people get to know each other. So that is also on my website. Also, this is kind of a fun thing. You don't know about this. When my parents had their 70th wedding anniversary, I said to my siblings, let's make a cookbook and everybody send in their recipes and their kids' recipes. And my niece put it together. And so it's recipes from all the kids. And I sell it when I speak, but I go, I don't know why I'm selling this. They're just regular old recipes, right? But I like to show it because I think food is such a symbol of family and gathering, and
Yeah,
food is comfort. And if you can pass this kind of legacy down to your kids, then this is a great thing to have too.
I love it. All right,
So,
friends,
and
you can find Sue, welcomeheart.com, and
mm.
you've got a shop. So click on the shop and you can
Oh,
find
yeah, and I
all
have a new
of
book
those
coming out.
books.
I have a new book coming
When
out.
does that come out, Sue?
I'm hoping by Christmas, and it's called Never Alone: Stories of Invitation and Connection. So a bunch of stories, no recipes. Oh, no,
S-
there are 4 recipes. Yeah, it's coming out with Elk Lake Publications, should be out soon, and I can't wait to give it to my friends so that they'll know Jesus.
Well, sounds completely relevant to all the conversation that we've had here. And I think that is great. Again, welcomeheart.com, friends. You can find Sue. Sue, thanks so much for being here. I definitely have
Yeah,
enjoyed the conversation. Always enjoy every conversation that I have with you. So thank you.
thank you, Eric.
Appreciate that. Friends, thanks so much for watching, for participating. We got some likes. We did have one person. Heather said she wants to come to wine night, Sue. So I don't know if she lives, I don't think she lives near you, but that's all right.
Okay.
Uh friends, thanks so much for watching, participating, sharing. If you could share this, go to YouTube and just search Eric Nevins Live. You'll find the show and you find all our videos, and you will just subscribe, share with a friend. That helps, does a lot for us as well. I want to remind you, so here's the thing: there's a loneliness epidemic. People are talking about it, professionals are talking about it, because it happens, it's happening, and it exists, and it might even be you. So if it is, you have one call to action today. I hope you go do all these other things. Buy Sue's book. Do that. Subscribe on my YouTube, or just do this. Take this one action. Ask somebody over for coffee, or out for coffee, or a tea, or dessert, or whatever it is. Just make one connection with somebody. Be discerning, but just make one connection with somebody
Yeah.
out there at the grocery store, or at a restaurant, or out for a walk. It doesn't really matter. Just make a connection and make an invitation. And even if you have to make a few before you get a yes, keep going, because this world is lonely, and God didn't make us to be alone. Okay, so friends, I want to end with this. This is my favorite thing to say, because I believe this wholeheartedly. Remember, you're only human, but humans do incredible things. Sometimes they make amazing invitations to people, and they do some cool stuff. So you're only human, but humans do incredible things. Go do something amazing, friends. Thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. See you guys next time.